Sorry, I've not done one for ages. Hi everyone, welcome to another Beckfoot Lifelong Learners podcast. We've got our lovely guest here today to talk to us about another really exciting topic and help guide us into what we can do in the classroom better and give us a bit of insight into an area that super interests you. So without further ado, do you want to introduce yourself, Luce, and who you are and what's your role at Beckfoot?
Yeah, so Lucy Lowde, I teach RE and psychology, and I also lead on Oracy, which is what I want to talk about today. So just the goal of getting all our students to be confident communicators and helping teachers as well so that they can encourage students to become confident communicators and to become confident communicators themselves.
Perfect. Can't wait to get into that. And we always start though, because it's the Lifelong Learners podcast, is there something that you have learned recently that's you've brought into the classroom or just in life really?
So it's a bit of a funny one. I learned that animals actually have accents. So cows moo with different accents and they communicate enough with each other so that they can tell them from a different region. And I found it fascinating.
Where did you get this from?
I was getting my nails done actually, and we were on about, because she'd watched some weird thing about it, and I was like, that can't be true, that can't be true. And then I became obsessed with researching Oracy and animals. And there's loads of people doing studies about how animals communicate with each other, and they all have slightly different accents from where they're from or different things like that. And then it made me think, like, do they get left out because they talk different? Do people, are they exotic? Are they exciting? So, yeah, I've just become obsessed with cow accents.
That's like the most random yet amazing. That's the most randomly amazing fact we've had on this, I think, apart from the chap from Happy Valley not being from Yorkshire, which accents, you see.
Accents, yeah.
Brilliant, wow.
Yeah.
So, tying that in, I suppose, you are of the word, spoken word, and Oracy, and that might tie into our Oracy strand, I don't know. You're here to talk to us today about Oracy and how that impacts us in the classroom, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
Why is that important to you and to us, I suppose, as a school?
So for me, I think communication is one of the best things that we have. I think it's so powerful in all walks of life. Communication, no matter what job you're in, no matter what role you want to do, whether you're in sports or in a classroom or anything, communication is vital. And especially, I'm quite a sort of person-centred person, really. And I think the best way that we can build relationships, we can learn about each other, is through communication. And so many people communicate in so many different ways. And I think some people think I'm a really good talker, but they don't realise that communication is also about listening.
Yes.
Or we have people who may be non-verbal or struggle with some elements of communication. And it's really important about people learning about their communication and us learning about students' communication, but also developing that, because when you leave Beckfoot, when our students go for job interviews, there's so many things, and somebody doesn't want somebody who's not confident at communicating.
Yes.
So that's why I'm sort of so interested in it.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? It literally is, I suppose, the key to future. We're about preparing our learners for life beyond Beckfoot. This has been such an integral part of that, preparing them to be confident communicators for the future. What have you been doing so far here at Beckfoot, and what's the impact been so far? I'm a form tutor, so I kind of know the impact it's had, but on a wider scale, what?
Yeah, so at the moment, Oracy's got like several different strands, and what I've wanted to do is make sure that Oracy isn't bolted on. Bolt-ons never last, and I've wanted to make sure that it's integrated into everything that we do.
Yeah.
The most recognisable element that staff would see is in tutor time.
Yes.
So there's a discrete Oracy curriculum, and that teaches Oracy skills to start off with, the different strands, the different discussion roles, but then like going forward with the different ones, it's about utilising your Oracy skills. It's about how you can apply them to real world problems, whether it's talking about finance, whether it's moral dilemmas. And we do some of the PSHC and RSC elements in there as well. Because for me, some of these difficult things that we've got to deal with in the world and are getting harder in the world, you've got to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting into a more tricky world with students where they've got a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of things going on, and they don't know how to communicate those issues.
To be able to articulate them.
Yeah. So that's sort of the first element of it. We also do like interview practice, and hopefully, the students that have been doing interviews or whatever, you'll see that they do that. through the Oracy. So that's the first bit, is the tutor. Second bit is teaching and learning. So we obviously have our everyone think, discuss and write, which is our sort of Oracy main thing. And then we've got my props with me. We've got an Oracy cluster as well. I'm just refining this at the moment, actually. And they're sort of Beckfoot tried and tested strategies to enhance everyone think, discuss. That discussion bit, a lot of people just sort of go, right, discuss.
Chat to the person next to you.
And it's not about it's about structuring that talk and really getting the right things out of them. So that's sort of the next element, and that's staff knowing how to teach Oracy. And really developing the strengths that they've got. They've all been tried and tested in all the different departments around school, so it works for our students, it's what's right for us. So we've got that. Slowly creeping in a little bit more into the personal development side of things with Oracy. Doing some work on sexism, misogyny and misandry at the moment. Just obviously done Children's Mental Health Week.
Yep.
I'm really, really keen on getting Oracy more into personal development, really supporting our students to be able to communicate how they feel.
About the difficult topics.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and I think that's why I want the staff strand to be stronger as well, is because there's so many topics that we don't know how to talk to our friends about. We don't know how to talk, and then all of a sudden we're stood in a classroom, and it's so difficult.
Yeah, how do we handle the awkward questions?
Yeah. So hopefully, and I'm not saying that, you follow this cluster and you've got everything, but it's about trying to have these conversations and understanding that they're not always going to be right, or you might say something wrong, or,
giving
just
us tools to handle them.
Yeah, that's the aim. So yeah, doing that. And then obviously we have the debate club as well, which is our extracurricular, which is scary because honestly, some of those children, you could put them in Parliament and they'd do a better job.
Yeah.
And they're 12 years old.
Yeah.
So
I can
terrifying.
picture some of the faces that you've got there now, like, yeah.
So opinionated.
Confident,
it's
but fantastic, brilliant.
Yeah, and the thing I love most about Debate Club is, we've got students from all different parts of the school, and we have students who are deaf, and the students are so amazing at passing around the little, I don't know what you call it, but the little
microphone,
the microphone, they pass all that around, which is fantastic. We've got autistic students who, they can't make eye contact, but they found ways in Debate Club to be able to develop their skills. We've got students who are really quiet, and then all of a sudden this big voice comes out after a few weeks.
You see the different side.
Yeah.
It gives them the chance to flourish, I suppose.
Yeah, and the ones that have got really strong opinions that we've recognised in class, and then we've gone, actually, do you think about other people's opinions? And they're not. But for me, the biggest thing with Oracy that people don't realise is listening. I think a lot of us are good at talking. I'm a good talker.
Yes,
but
me too.
yeah, but Oracy is all about listening, and I think that's sort of the skill that a lot of us are lacking.
Yeah.
Cool. Or we think we're listening, but we're not hearing what somebody's actually
Taking
saying.
it in, absorbing it. Cool. Let's move on to that bit then. You mentioned the cluster and arming us as teachers. Yeah. How do we use our strategies, like everybody think, everybody discuss, everybody write? How does Oracy lend itself to that? And perhaps if we were doing an everybody think, we had a couple of students on a previous podcast talking about how everybody think and then just be cold calling, how that can make them feel put on the spot. But there's an argument that there's a place for that. How does Oracy, do you think, fit into that? Or how could Oracy support us with that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think for me it's about building the confidence, and it's creating the culture of talk in your classrooms.
Right.
And it's not something that happens straight away, and it's something that you've got to slowly develop, and you've got to have trust, and that's all about the relationships and knowing your students. So you might start off with everyone think and give some real specifics on the board. This is what I want you to think about, and this is how I want you to think about it. It might be that you start off giving them the right answers. So it might be on their knowledge organiser, or it might be something you've just discussed. So they already know that they're going to win. Right. They've got the right idea.
So we're arming them with confidence before. It's part of the routine building, I suppose.
Yeah, you're just setting them up for success, really. And I think a lot of the time students seem to think that we set them up for failure, that when we call, we're trying to call them out, and that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think a few times, if you can really build that confidence of you are right, then it can be really good. It can be a case of, right, everyone think, I'm going to ask a question on your mini whiteboard, and you just go around those students who you know are less confident and sort of say to them, oh, that's the right answer, that's fantastic, and set a few up, and then doing it. And obviously with call, it's important that we understand that everybody's thinking and participating, but for some of those students who are either vulnerable or less confident, or it, scares them or something, there's just little things that you can do to slowly build that. So then when they do get called on, it's good. Or just go around and say, do you know what? I really liked what you said. I might be asking you that later.
Right.
And I know you're giving them a bit of prior warning, but it does just sort of help them to go, oh, I do know the answer.
Yeah. And then in future, they think, oh, well, I've done it before. I just think about our Emmy at school and our last parents' evening. She would never, if she was asked, she would be too shy to answer. But they've worked with her, they've built up a confidence. And the last parents' evening we went to, she's now she's offering the answers herself because they've done the work to build up that confidence.
And it's all about doing that, and it's all about the groundwork, and it's all about, like, sometimes it'll take a while. It's not something that, I said before, it's not about bolt-ons. It's about something that you do gradually and you develop and you embed.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing as well, like Oracy and some of the call calling, it can be a little bit more personalised. So it might be that you go around to the table and you have a discussion and you say, oh, what about this, Amy?
Yeah.
And you're asking them in a smaller group, so they build that confidence slowly. Because actually, for a teenager, talking out, 30 kids is quite a difficult thing to do.
That's something that, doing it in the smaller groups, you can still cold call, but in a smaller setting would definitely build confidence. It's especially in a practical sense for us, when they're all out on the field, we can call them in smaller groups at a time. I like that one. That's
and then
something I can
eventually,
take.
they hopefully would feel more confident doing it out loud.
And you mentioned about everybody discuss.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we've got the bell. Go carry on. We mentioned everybody discuss, and it's kind of like, right, everybody chat about your answer. We've all had to think, chat about it with the person next to you. You were like, oh, it's not about that. It's about building the conversation and building a better everybody discuss. How do we build a better everybody discuss in an Oracy sense so that they can build that better quality answer and use their voice?
Yeah, so one of the things we've got with the cluster is techniques to do that. So it breaks down that everyone discuss element. So it could be that you give people a role within that discussion.
Right.
It could be that you're giving specific questions to discuss, and they can be really, really specific, so that you know that when they're going to answer, they're talking about the right knowledge, they're becoming expert learners. Because actually, they could be talking for 5 minutes about something completely wrong.
Okay.
So it's about giving them the time to say, this is the right answer, I want you to go into the depth about this. It could be problem solving. If you're thinking about, say you've got a table of 4 and you've got 4 students, you might say, right, one of you is going to be a builder in this discussion, one of you is going to be a summariser in the discussion, giving everybody a role. The quiet person could at first start being the listener, who's then going to summarise afterwards.
Okay.
And it's about developing and structuring the talk, so it's not just right, off you go.
It's not just everybody have a chat about this. You are being it's not just a check-in activity, it's a quality building activity.
And what I've just started doing in my classroom, I'm trialling at the moment, it might be terrible, is I've got loads of clipboards and I put roll cards on the clipboards and I put little questions. There's a mini whiteboard attached to it and I just scribble questions down and go in and say, right, there you go, discuss that. Or as I'm going around, I'm listening to what they're saying and I play devil's advocate because I think it's fun. Or I just, probe them a little bit more, and I tend to play that role of prober. So I'm making sure they're having a discussion.
And modelling that for somebody else in the group who might get that role later, like the probing.
And I think really going around your classroom, like listen to what they're saying and sometimes just say, oh, actually, that's not right. And I think challenging when they're wrong and saying, can you discuss it in this way? Or have you challenged that opinion? Have you thought about it this way?
Cool.
So yeah, it's just about structuring that talk and giving students what they need to make sure that discussion is meaningful.
Yeah, and it sounds like giving them the right amount of time for that discussion to make sure it's a quality discussion.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm not saying that we've got a lot to do. I'm not saying that every single lesson should have 15, 20 minutes to talk. That's not right. Some lessons, and I'm an RE teacher, so it's a lot easier for us, but sometimes there'll be a discussion and you'll be like, wow, this is incredible. They're really getting to the depth of this. They're really exploring ideas, and I'll just let them talk.
Let them run with it.
Yeah. Or sometimes I just go, right, that's not great. Let's pull that back in. Let's reteach or rediscuss a topic, and then we'll go back into the discussion. But yeah, it's no sort of set time or anything like that. Just let them lead it sometimes.
Lovely.
I love just walking around listening to them, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. What is coming next then here at Beckfoot? Where do you see Oracy going? You've done so much so far. What's the next steps?
Yeah, so next steps really is sort of developing the idea of mental health and personal development. starting to do a little bit more of it, and actually I'm starting to see some of the impact, and I'd love for our students to be able to really talk to each other, really develop that culture of we can discuss what's going on, and get that emotional intelligence through communication. I think that'd be really impactful for our students.
Definitely.
And then the second thing is I want to develop our use of non-verbal communication. So Will, my other half, for my birthday that's coming up.
Happy birthday!
On Thursday, I'm going to be 29.
Happy birthday!
I know, I'm cracking on. But he's got me some sign language lessons. So he's got me up to my level 3. So it'll be basic, but it'll be some of it. So he's been learning a little bit of sign himself because he has a customer at work, a little boy who's deaf, and it was frustrating him that he couldn't communicate with him, and he can only communicate with his mum. And at Christmas he learned to say Merry Christmas and a few other things, and he just said the boy's face just lit up, and he absolutely loved it. And Will was buzzing. I thought, I want that feeling.
So small thing, massive impact.
Yeah, so the aim is I'm going to learn some basic sign, and then hopefully I'll be able to bring that into a tutor programme so that everyone in Beckfoot will be able to do some basic sign, but that's basic communication that everyone can have.
It's inclusive.
That's the aim.
Yeah.
And I just think it'd just be such a lovelier place
Yeah.
if we could all make sure we could communicate in one way or another.
Yeah, that's brilliant. What a lovely, lovely thing to finish on. Love that. Positivity going forward.
I could be terrible.
Fabulous. No, it will be fine. It'll be great. I think just another string to the confident communicators bow here at Beckfoot. Like, amazing. Well done. Thank you so much for your time today. I've loved it. We could talk about talking and communicating forever, I think, you and I. You know, we probably wouldn't shut us up, but we better hold it there. And thank you so much again. We really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate it. And we'll see or hear, listen again next time. Thank you so much. Bye.